So I'm done with this project. I want to open one of the projects from your project folder. Now I've got two copies. They're identical because we're going to use our visual brushes in two different ways here. Let's start with brushes 1, and let's open the project. Now what comes up is just a simple data entry field that's asking the user for the name, city, state, and zip code. When I press F5, you'll see that there's also an animation of that orange bar going back and forth in the background. Now in a real-world user experience, you'd use something a little more subtle, but I wanted to emphasize the animation here so you don't miss it. This looks nice to start, but I want to make this jump out a little bit more, maybe give it a bit of a different feel. I'm going to use a visual brush to create a reflection of my text down onto the blue surface. Now I could use a drawing brush like we used in the previous section, but if I were to do that, I wouldn't maintain the animation of the orange bar moving around, nor would I be able to capture any of the modifications that my user is making. Let me show you how to use a visual brush to get that behavior. I'm going to close this. You remember back in an earlier lesson, we worked very briefly with visual brushes. In this case, I want to be able to hide my page 1 grid without my page 1 disappearing. So let me expand that in the tree, and I want to make the visual brush out of this grid here. I'm going to go up to the tools and make this into a visual brush. Now it's asking me for a name. I'm just going to call this my page 1 brush. So let's take a look over in my resources and see what I've got. Now, defined in my window, I have a page 1 brush, and if you look, it looks exactly like the data entry field on my artboard. Okay, well, it's smaller, but it's still the same design. Let's go ahead and see how we can use that. I'm going to select my rectangle tool and drag out a new rectangle. Now I'm going to drag that page 1 brush from my resources palette directly onto the rectangle and apply it to the fill. Now as soon as that's done, you can see that it's taken everything that my visual brush is looking at, the name, the city, the animation, everything, and duplicated it down below. When I press F5, you'll see that my duplicate is also keeping in time with the orange bar as it moves back and forth. And when I set the cursor in here and start typing, you'll see even my cursor and the text that I'm typing is duplicated down there the same way. This is what the visual brush does for you. It allows you to make a live feed of one location in your geometry and duplicate that somewhere else. So let me see what else I can do with that. I'm going to close this, and I'm going to take that rectangle, and first off, if you notice, the rectangle had a stroke. That's because I've only applied this visual brush to the fill of the rectangle. I can still modify any of the other properties however I want. Let me go to my properties. Let me switch back to the properties view, go to my stroke, and remove it.